There's several different coverages that you will find on a technology errors and omissions product. The errors and omissions, of course, is kind of the meat. Media liability is often included as part of this, and cyber liability, really important. So sometimes I get asked, what's the difference between tech and cyber? Well, tech is errors and omissions if you make a mistake on somebody else's system. Cyber could be because of an error or omission if you are a technology professional. So sometimes there's a gray area there or an overlap. Sometimes it is just if you had a type of data breach. So we'll go into that a little bit further in here. And then media liability can be important depending on what they're doing. So we're going to jump right into the media. When you have media, you have intellectual property and personal injury. Those are the two things that make up media liability. Intellectual property is going to refer to creations of the mind, inventions, artistic works. It's going to be trademarks. It could be copyright. So there's a lot of different things that a technology professional would need intellectual property for. For example, we had a claim. It was a basic IT person that would go into offices. This person would go into offices and set up people with different software, and they hired an independent contractor to help out with a large project. And during this project, this person that they hired to help out decided that they were going to use the same software license for every single user in that office. And the software, which you can't do, you needed a separate license for each person. And so that major software company, I won't name names, but it was a pretty big one that's in Washington, found out and was not happy because that was a copyright infringement of the software. So that was an example of a claim for a technology professional when it comes to IP. Other things could be, what if you're a website designer and you design a website for someone and you put up a picture that you didn't have purchased the rights to. The person who owns that image is going to come after the business that you designed the website for and also you for an intellectual property claim. Personal injury, isn't this a GL coverage? I get asked that sometimes. It can be, yes, but GL, in the ISO form and the BOP form, will exclude professional services, and it will exclude personal injury claims arising from professional services. So you could potentially have a gap if you're only relying on personal injury on the GL form. So you want personal injury with the E&O. And you can see here, claim alleging wrongful entry, wrongful eviction, right of privacy, individuals who have had their image or likeness used without their permission. Few claims here that we've had. We had one, it was a web analytics firm, and they were attaching a cookie as you're surfing the internet that you weren't able to, you can say, I want to disable my cookies. You weren't able to get rid of this cookie. It was an error or omission of that web analytics firm, and it was a pretty big right of privacy type of claim. We put it under the personal injury category because it was a right of privacy. I have the right to surf the internet and not be tracked was basically the claim. Now you could see where something like that could be a little bit in the cyber world as we talk about cyber, but it really was a personal injury claim. We also had a social media marketing consultant. So I'm kind of already giving you a little taste of the types of risks that we write, the types of classes that we write. We put social media marketing consultants on our tech form because a lot of them are also doing web analytics and social engine or search engine optimization and website design. And then they may take your Facebook and say, okay, let's get, the most likes that we can, and let's develop a campaign. And that's great, and they do all of these different services for the web. We had one individual that took an image off of YouTube, took like a screenshot, and developed a campaign around it. And that campaign was so horrible and distasteful that not only the followers of that company's Facebook page, but also the employees were horrified. They had to take it down immediately. The business, not our insured, the business tried to do some PR because the ad was so horrible that they made a large donation to a battered women's shelter. All right, that gives you an idea of how horrible this ad was. That was the industry or the nonprofit that they chose, and the model brought a claim against our insured because not only did our insured use her image without her permission, but also depicted her in a false light. I never would have done that ad. I hated that ad. You just depicted me in a false light. And that was a $750,000 claim. So those are some of the things that pop up with personal injury. Network security liability. This is part of cyber liability. All right. So there's a lot of different things that come up with cyber. Cyber is almost like an umbrella, and we'll talk a lot about the first party coverages later in this presentation. Network security liability, that's your transmission of malicious code. That's if your computer's used in a denial of service attack. Misappropriation of personally identifiable information or third party corporate information. We often see that this is what's required for a contract. If I'm coming onto your property, you want to make sure that I have GL. You also want to make sure that I have network security liability so that if I cause a breach for you, I have coverage for that. So this is where it does get gray when you have E&O and cyber for a technology professional. If a basic E&O policy does not include this network security liability, and a cyber policy excludes professional services, and I'm an IT professional and I come into your office and I hook up your network, I make sure your firewall is configured correctly, and oops, I mess up and I cause you to have a breach, is that a cyber claim or an E&O claim? So we always put them together. We put them on the same form because we don't want two different carriers or two different forms pointing fingers at each other saying, well, no, that's cyber because you caused a breach. And then the cyber policy says, no, that's E&O because that was your professional service. So we always put them together. Privacy liability, you'll often see this as an insuring agreement. This also falls under the cyber liability umbrella. This could be unauthorized access to the insured's computer system, all right? So I just talked about how I could cause a breach potentially for my client. What if I have a breach and people decide to bring a claim against me because all of their personally identifiable information was released? What about a denial of authorized electronic access? I'm hosting all of your records in the cloud and you don't have access to them. That could be considered privacy liability. And then just violation of a privacy policy. You often find that on websites, all of your application service providers, software as a service, where you have a username and password, they have a privacy policy. And if you read that privacy policy, which, hey, if you want something to do that's fun on a Friday night, grab yourself a glass of wine and start reading some of these privacy policies. I'm kidding. But they can be lengthy, but they basically say, this is what I do with your information. I'm going to collect your information. This is what I promise to do with it. If they violate that, that will fall under privacy liability, which is a type of cyber coverage, but important for technology professionals, especially if there's a username and password involved with their services.